everyone. This is Nathan with People's Town Hall. We are a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization dedicated to the simple idea that our government works better when our lawmakers regularly hear from the people they work for, which is their constituents. We are at an exciting transition time when mask mandates are ending, and certainly case rates of COVID-19 are dropping in basically every state. In Oregon, I think it's dropping to where it was in July of 2021. But we are still in a period where we're doing virtual town halls to make sure we do not endanger anybody. Hopefully, in-person town halls are around the corner. But we're excited to bring these vital conversations to you virtually here on Facebook Live and on YouTube. We are today in Malheur County, Oregon, with Senator Wyden and some of his constituents. If you are an Oregonian and you are watching, we hope to have time to get to your questions as well. So please enter some questions in the comments, and we'll try to get to those. So without further ado, Senator Wyden, thanks so much for joining us.
Nathan, thank you. And I so wish that I could be with all of you in person in Malheur County, and that was the plan until very late on Thursday night. The plan was I was going to get a plane from DC to Boise and then drive into Eastern Oregon. But as you probably saw on TV last night, the Senate went very late and was working on the whole effort to keep the government open. So that was until we can have in-person town hall meetings again. Last week, I had my number 1,000 town hall meeting as part of the pledge to go to every county every year and just throw open the doors of government. So we'll be having those again soon. It's something that I think is the best of democracy, the best of the Oregon way, because people look you in the eye and say what's on their mind. And that's how we come together. For example, we're probably going to talk a fair amount about the Oahe. And everybody said we couldn't come together on the Oahe. And with so many good people in Malheur, we have come together. And we're going to get our legislation passed and help our ranchers and protect our treasures. And that's, to me, the Oregon way is all about. It's not about Democrats and Republicans. It's about creating opportunity for people. So big thanks. Finally, a special thanks to Nathan and the inimitable People's Town Hall, because what they've done during the pandemic is just give me a chance to throw open the doors of digital democracy. And so we're just going to take questions. No subjects off limits. It's not for people who are Democrats or Republicans or this philosophy, that philosophy. It's for people who want to be heard. So Nathan, let's have at it. I understand you've got a fair number of questions. I see people in front of me online, and let's have some fun and do government the way we ought to be doing it, listening to people.
Terrific. And yes, and Senator Wyden said, we do not ask people's party affiliation, who you voted for.
Sure. Nathan, I just recognized we already have a audible that needs
Go ahead.
Called, and that is before the meeting, we have a little bit of business. This is not going to be a windy senatorial address, but we're going to recognize a very special person here. I don't think you can really calculate how hard the last 2 years have been from a public health standpoint. Hours and hours and families and tears and hopes, and you name it. It has been a grueling and draining experience. And your public health team has just been sensational. And I got to tell you, when you had 1,000 town meetings, you get into every nook and cranny of the state, you hear people feel good about their friends and neighbors. But I'll tell you, based on my keeping track of these things, I'm on the Intelligence Committee, so I have access to a lot of information. Sarah Poe's approval in the county seems to stand at about 108%, because I can't find, oh, there we're already getting big shout outs. I can't find a single person in the county who doesn't basically say that Sarah Poe is the greatest thing since night baseball. She just has so many fans. And my guess is when she signed on to protect communities in Malheur, she wasn't thinking she'd be dealing with a very difficult global pandemic. But when her community needed her, she didn't run and hide. She just stepped up, and she didn't ask anybody about being a Democrat or Republican or this philosophy and that philosophy and whatnot. She just said, I want everybody to have the best possible, health. So Sarah, just thanks, and more thanks. As I say, your friends and neighbors just cannot keep going on about all the wonderful work you did. So let me get on with the business. I don't know if everyone can see it, but this is a special flag flown over the Capitol. It's a real honor to be able to present it to Sarah. And before we start in with questions, Sarah, let me yield the floor to you for anything you might want to say about your friends, your neighbors, your work. But I just want to give up the floor to you, and then we'll go everybody right to questions. And this flag will be heading out to Sarah's here very quickly. Sarah, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm so moved, and thank you, Senator Wyden, for your ongoing support. And I have to say, we have been pretty successful over the last few years, sometimes just celebrating small victories than bigger ones. But it's because of the strength of relationships within our rural community that we had the successes we did, because it wasn't me, and it wasn't even just our public health team. This has been such a community-wide effort where we communicate and we work together, and when we ask for volunteers and support, but also listening to feedback, because we really believe in a more local approach. And from the schools to healthcare to businesses, we really worked through some really hard things. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to serve. That this has been an incredible way, honestly, to get to know my community better. And I hope that we just build on the successes and strides that we made through hopefully some less dramatic years ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And let's go right to everybody's questions at this point.
Great. And Sarah, did you want to ask a question in our town hall format, or go to the next Oregonian?
I can. There are a few things that I think you could help us address. When it comes to public health funding, Oregon's actually way below the national average. We're about $7 per person lower than the national average. It would take about $29 million more dollars in the state of Oregon towards public health to bring us to average, to bring us to normal. And part of that is because we have a state-run system, right? There isn't just a federal system that says this is how much public health costs across the entire country. But certainly Oregon should be doing better, putting more money there, but also having more guidance and leadership from the CDC and from the federal level, saying this is these are some benchmarks for what we would expect. And I've actually been incredibly impressed with the CDC, especially when it comes to emergencies like we've been in the last couple of years. And unfortunately, Oregon hasn't always followed what the CDC put forward. And so I I realize some of that is more of a state issue, but certainly we appreciate the guidance that would come at a federal level saying that public health should not be so different state by state by state, and unfortunately is worse in Oregon. So just as much as we have a good system with hardworking people, we need more money consistently.
Sarah, that's still you asking the question, right?
Yeah, that's Sarah.
Good. And Sarah,
Yeah.
your point is very well taken. And for example, in 2 areas, the new COVID package that you're hearing about in the omnibus, I and others really have pressed hard to get the rural share up. Because look, we all know that you can't really predict another variant. We pray that there won't be another one, but we always have to be prepared. And that's what I've been doing with respect to this new COVID package that you're hearing about in the last 24 hours, is making the case to the leadership of both political parties. You've got to get a more fair shake to the rural communities. Now, one of the other arguments I make is the Senate, to a great extent, is a very rural-oriented institution. You know, we have senators from small states. They get 2 senators, just like senators from big states that have, you know, big cities. And I say, you know, not only are you helping my smaller communities where I'm going for town hall meetings, but you're helping your folks. So message sent, Sarah. And how obvious this is vintage Sarah. In other words, Sarah could be basking in getting this honor that she's having in front of her community. And what does Sarah do? Sarah says, okay, thanks a lot for the honor, everybody. I want to make sure my community gets a fairer shake in the next COVID package. So message sent, Sarah. And Kathleen and I will be in touch with you as the Senate, probably even as early as this upcoming week, takes up what you've been reading about in the news overnight, the COVID package. And I'm going to be pushing with everything I got to get a more fair shake for rural areas. Great point, great way for all of us to see what Sarah's all about. She gets the honor, she smiles, and then she starts talking about what she can do for her community. Another reason why it's so important to recognize her. God bless, Sarah.
Thanks so much for joining us, Sarah, and thanks for all you do. Next up, we have Tim.
All right. Thanks, Senator Wyden, for organizing another town hall in Malheur County. My question, and some forefront to it as well. On April 13th, 2019, you announced at your last in-person town hall meeting in Malheur County that you were going to help bring people together from all backgrounds to focus on the Owyhee. You acknowledged the Owyhee's a special place, and conversations about the future have dragged on for years and years. You wanted to find a solution and do it the Oregon way. You did get a group together in 2019, including ranchers, conservation groups, sportsmen, recreators, and many more. I was one of them invited to that table. Together, we sacrificed months to create a solution. November 2019, we had a collaborative public lands bill called Malheur County Empowerment for the Owyhee Act. Malheur CEO is what we called it for short. Then all of us at the table considered a compromise for all, but we all agreed to it. We all thank you for your efforts for allowing our voices to be heard. And that said, this work has been quiet on your end since the close of the 116th congressional session. Since March 2020 and the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, the world has had a lot going on, and we recognize that. But the Owyhee is no different. Visitation was already increasing pre-COVID, and during the pandemic, visitation skyrocketed in the area. While we're happy to see people enjoying their public lands, we're also concerned for the well-being of the landscape. The Malheur CEO Act tackled a lot surrounding the protection of the ecosystem and the resources needed, while also benefiting Malheur County's economy regarding recreation and ranching. My question is, with more than 30 plus years of conversation about the future of the Owyhee landscape, It's time that we have a definite answer so we can all start working on what needs to be done rather than conversations on how to do it. When will you re-engage with all of us that were involved in 2019 and revise and reintroduce this bill?
Tim, you're being way too logical for the federal government. And I like to think that we've never stopped engaging ever since that 2019 kickoff. And even before that, folks know that the ranchers came to see me and asked me to take this project on. And I said, so guys, you figured nobody'd be crazy enough to put their head in the middle of this ringer. And they all started smiling and said, yep, that's pretty much why we're here, Ron. And as you know, we now have a extraordinary coalition. We've got ranchers, we got environmental folks, we got recreationists. You know, we worked through some very challenging issues. I wanted the message to be far and wide. For the ranchers, nothing is changing in terms of flexibility with respect to grazing. So we have constantly been bringing the committees up to date, continuing the discussions, which, as you know, have really never stopped. And I think we've met now something like a dozen times since the 2019 effort. And as you know, I was there right before the pandemic, looking forward to being back because I thought I was going to be there with you today, strolling down Main Street or, you know, wherever, be in Vail, Ontario. So I think we understand what needs to be done. And we basically have a frame. We're continuing to look for refinements. But I've been talking to the chairman of the committee. I was chairman of the committee before I went off to be chairman of the finance committee and work on some things I think we'll be talking about today, like lowering the cost of prescription medicine, keep people from getting mugged over the cost of insulin and stuff like that. And Joe Manchin, the chairman, has made a commitment to work with us on it. And so has Republican Senator John Barrasso. So I feel like we made some progress over the pandemic period, and we're just going to make sure that we advance this bill. And I'm not giving up till we get this bill on the president's desk. And I think, Tim, you said it all, that we love the fact that the Oahe is so appreciated and so loved. But my God, people have been talking about how to reach a smart, balanced 21st century solution since before we arrived at the 21st century. And when you all and all the ranchers came to see me in the office before 2019, and everybody never thought I'd do it, I said, we're going to make this happen. All the credit belongs to you all at home in Malheur, and we're just going to stay at it till we get it done. And I'm very encouraged about where we are and our strategy for getting it done in 2022. Thanks for starting the meeting. Between you and Sarah, you guys can take the rest of the day off because you just helped a lot of people. And I'm on the program.
Great. Thanks for joining us, Tim.
Okay.
Next up, we have Sammy.
Hello, Senator, and very good response to the previous question. So thank you very much, and thank you for all of your hard work and your staff staying up late last night. And I also would like to give my support for the River Democracy Act. Maybe that'll come up later, but I'm here to talk about lithium. So Oregon Public Broadcasting aired a segment back in mid-February, and so it's now well known that Malheur County, which is the ancestral territory of the Northern Paiute people, is home to a really large sedimentary hosted lithium deposit, which is also a double-edged sword because lithium is the key element to energy storage and to switching and weaning away from fossil fuels. but also at what cost to the land, the local people, and to Oregonians. And actually, just this morning, NPR had a wonderful segment on how automobile makers are potentially changing the face of what the mining industry looks like because of accessing minerals like this, lithium. So Oregon has the potential then to become a large lithium producer, but with business as usual, how resources are extracted and then sold to the lowest bidder, I worry about the future of that extraction being wasted. So, Senator, I'm here to ask you how you intend to steer the conversation about renewables and lithium and the extraction of this Oregon lithium specifically toward the benefit of the people, the county of Malheur, and the state of Oregon, and also the United States of America and globe largely. So thank you for the time, Senator.
Sammy, your question couldn't be more timely. And as chairman of the Finance Committee, I've been heavily involved in this effort to create the classic win-win kind of situation where we tap the opportunity for more good paying jobs while we also protect our treasures. And this week, I introduced legislation, a federal piece of legislation that will be referred to our committee, the Energy and Natural Resources Committee, and it would expand access to critical minerals supplied right here in the United States and in Eastern Oregon. And we ought to not confuse people what the bottom line is. I think what Sammy is talking about is reducing our country's dependence on foreign produced minerals from countries like Russia and China. My bill would do that, and we'll get you the information on the bill number and the like. My bill will do that while creating more good paying red, white, and blue jobs here at home. And we make it clear, Sammy, we can do that without throwing environmental laws in the trash can. You know, what has been so important here, and Sammy's point really gets to this, the two are not mutually exclusive. We can do both. A smart bill will do both. A not so smart bill will do neither. And lithium and other critical minerals. And Sammy's right. We're talking now about Eastern Oregon. We're not talking about someplace 10,000 miles away, for Pete's sakes. Talking about Eastern Oregon. Lithium and other critical minerals play a big role in the manufacturing of technologies like solar and wind power, the electric car batteries Sammy was touching on, smartphones. And what my bill does is revive and modernize critical mineral production sites around the country. Can be used in Eastern Oregon, can be used elsewhere for the most important minerals needed in domestic manufacturing. And you've just given us a really good example, Sammy. And I can tell you, I'm going to pull out all the stops to get this passed. And I actually was juggling a fair amount yesterday as well. And I ducked into an Energy and Natural Resources Committee hearing just to make the case. And I got a really good reception from both the Democrats and the Republicans. And there's a lot of industry interest and a lot of environmental interest because people are looking to not just have a fight about something, but to get something done.
Great. Thanks for the question, Sammy. Next up, we have Dan.
Hello, Senator Wyden. Hello, everybody else. Thanks for being here.
Hey.
So my name's Dan. I run a backcountry guide service, actually based in Baker County, but I'm frequently all over Eastern Oregon. And so I'm, echoing Sammy in support of the River Democracy Act. And I guess then my question would be, Senator Wyden, and how do you expect or hope for the the act to affect our communities, and follow up, what can guides like myself, guides and outfitters, do to support passage of the act?
Well, I do hope that we can bring Oregon together around this, because recreation, folks, is a big time economic engine, a big time economic engine. It brings billions of dollars for our state, and hundreds of small businesses have endorsed this, many in rural Oregon, because they know that this is an economic winner. You might have people who sell recreation equipment. You might have guides. You might have breweries that cater to folks who've been up on the mountain, gone on a big hike. It's a major economic multiplier. And so what we did is to recognize how important it was to protect interests that Oregonians feel strongly about. For example, with respect to our farmers, we made it really clear that the bill is going to have no impact on farmers and folks grazing on private land. Private property rights are specifically upheld, and river management plans apply only to federal land. We make it clear that private property is sacrosanct. We have a shored up effort to fight wildfire. People wanted to know, hey, is this going to make it harder to fight wildfire? We know these fires are not your grandfather's fires. They're bigger and they're hotter. They're more powerful. So we created essentially zones that the professionals at the Forest Service say is consistent with their plans to fight fire. So I know that there may be some people, out there spreading, rumors and the like, that this bill will harm people's private property or make it harder to fight fire. But I'll just tell you, the facts show otherwise. And this past summer, I had a special town hall meeting where we invited everybody from rural Oregon to talk just about river democracy. And I felt really good about it. And I think we continue to make progress. And for anybody who wants more information on it, we'll be glad to give it to them. And people say, well, what can I do? Just talk to your small rural businesses, your friends and neighbors in Malheur, and spread the word, because I think that this goes right to the point that Tim and friends were talking about at the beginning, is we want the kind of economic development efforts that strengthen the economy and at the same time protect our treasures and do it in a balanced way.
Thank you.
Good.
Great. Thanks for joining us, Dan. Next up, we have Dana Young from the Treasure Valley Community College.
Hello, Senator Wyden. Thank you so much for joining us and holding the town hall today. We really appreciate you and everything you do for us. I particularly appreciate your support for post-secondary education, and specifically for community colleges. And I'm just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your sense of the potential increase in the federal Pell Grants for those students that really need that in order to pay for housing and food and all of the costs that have gone up, transportation now to go along with that.
I'm trying right now, Dana, you probably heard, people don't seem to be aware about the tax implications of the Pell Grants, and I'm trying to provide them relief on that and to expand it for the neediest students. Look, we're looking at a very different economy today than we were before the pandemic. And there are a lot of reasons for this. In other words, some people say it's this and some people say it's that. I think the reality is that during the pandemic, a lot of people said, I've got a chance to really sharpen up my skills. And they went, for example, online, they took a new course, they got some training. and they decided that something else made sense for their career. Now, Oregon is clearly coming back, folks. I was looking at the numbers here last day or two. You know, during the darkest days of the pandemic, we were at double digit, unemployment. Now, unemployment is still higher in rural areas than in the metropolitan areas, but it's come down. And I think what we need to do is make sure, Ms. Young, that we have more training and education, particularly for the kind of jobs of the future. And, the reality is really no field is not tech driven today. It used to be people would say, hey, Ron's a big tech guy. He wrote the Internet Tax Freedom Bill to limit discriminatory taxes on the internet. He wrote the digital signatures law, and he's up on encryption, and we hear him talking about all that. But the reality is every field, healthcare like Sarah, or agriculture, it's all technology driven. And so we've got to make sure that people have a chance to get those skills. I'm a big supporter, as you know, of community colleges. I'm also a big supporter of apprenticeship programs because I think they're terrific. And then I want everybody in Malheur to know that as long as I'm chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, if there's a little business in Malheur County and they decide they want to do the training in-house with themselves, as long as I'm chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, they're going to be able to get the current tax write-off so that when they go out and train somebody or do it in concert with you all for this portion that they're doing, they get the tax write-off. So we really appreciate our community colleges. I'm also co-sponsor of the Pell Grant Expansion Act for the very low-income folks, and we tie it to inflation so that for these low-income families, they really would get some help. I mean, the reality is so much of the system and debt and stuff, I want to give the low-income person, some relief in these retirement savings kinds of things because they have student debt, and let's give them a chance to get some opportunities when they're trying to save for their retirement as well, and I have legislation to do that.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
We appreciate our community colleges, that's for sure.
Thanks for joining us, Dana. Next up, we have Clint.
Yes, I'm Clint Schock, plant scientist and retired from Oregon State University. We have great medical needs with virus, cancer, dementia, and many other problems. There is a vast variability of natural compounds, but the United States is not currently competitive in the discovery of new medicines, especially those from natural sources. Would you support an initiative to accelerate the discovery of chemicals with pharmaceutical potential or properties? And I'm very, very thankful of your whole representation of us in the Senate and so much that you've been doing for us.
Well, Clint, you're very kind. Let me make sure I can get the question right. Are you looking for medicines that are developed from plants or trees and things like that?
Well, what's happened is that the United States has a pharmaceutical industry that's very much related to patents and very high cost establishment of products. And that pharmaceutical industry dominates the whole field. And in contrast, China has both a pharmaceutical industry and they have a traditional Chinese medicine tradition. So they are into big tech, looking into plant materials, and they're very creative and probing this tremendous treasure trove of natural products. And so we are not competitive. We don't have an independent funded group that can explore and discover things. And so we're leaving an opportunity idle. And clearly we have needs. We have tremendous growing needs in dementia and dealing with virus and many other things. So.
Clint, you're right on in terms of your focus here. And by the way, my mother had Alzheimer's and dementia for almost 15 years. She got a master's degree at Yale back in the days when no woman got a master's degree from a prestigious school like that. And so I'm very supportive of the Alzheimer's Association and all the work that they're doing. And I very much share your view with respect to trying to look at plants and the ag sector for opportunities for relieving pain and helping people with conditions. For example, hemp and CBD, we're talking about the hemp that is not marijuana. It is, the hemp product, and that is used for a variety of conditions to treat pain and this kind of thing. Clearly is an example of where Oregon is in the lead. Oregon is a very large producer of hemp, and many young farmers who thought, well, I don't know if I'll have opportunities to be an ag, maybe I ought to just leave rural Oregon and, go somewhere else, go to some city or something. They're saying, hey, hemp's really looking good. Hemp's really promising. My farm is well suited for it. My father's working it. Maybe I'll go to Oregon or Oregon State or somewhere, and then I'm gonna come back and farm. The other thing I'll tell you is I showed years ago that I had a big interest in this, because you might recall that Taxol came originally from trees in Oregon, the Pacific yew tree, and the government was going to burn it up. And I stepped in and said, no way you're going to burn it up. And we preserved it, and it became the original source of Taxol, which helped to fight cancer, the women's challenges with cancer. Now, the other part of your good question, Clint, is that very often after people get involved because it's a natural source of dealing with disease and the like, the big drug companies take it over. In other words, they jump on it and they try to wring the value of it. So I'm trying to get them to have to do more in terms of patent rights and the rights to reasonable pricing for people as well when it comes. And by the way, in our state, very often those plants are on federal land. So your tax dollars are supporting it. Good on you.
Great. Thanks for joining us today, Clint. Next up, we have Janet.
Hi, Senator Wyden. Good to see you again. And hello to everyone else. I'm a retired onion packer and shipper here in Ontario, and I'm currently just a community volunteer. I've noticed that many of our well-to-do residents here in Ontario are leaving. They're moving across the river to Idaho. And I think part of the reason is because our Oregon state tax is at such a low threshold. It's like $1 million now compared to the federal exemption of over $11 million. And I know this is basically a state issue, but I think Senator Wyden, you're probably aware of that discrepancy too. And I know attorneys are they're telling their clients, because they're asking them, how can I avoid estate taxes? Well, they're telling them, move out of state. And so we're losing a lot of talent and skills and dollars from these more well-to-do residents. And so is there any way that you can help our state to increase that estate tax exemption to a little higher level? You know, because many of our farms and ranches are worth well over $1 million.
Yeah, Janet, your point is very well taken. Did you say you farm onions?
We used to be an onion packer and shipper.
Yeah. Are you all retired now?
Yes, I've been retired for several years now.
Okay. Let's talk about estate taxes, and I'll give you a little bit of my philosophy on it as well. And of course, I don't want to pretend, Janet, that I'm a state legislator or the governor or something like that. I can give you, my opinion. Now, the current federal exemption, as opposed to the state exemption, is $24 million for a married couple, $12 million per individual. And under that, only a small percentage of people pay a federal estate tax. I also have been trying to figure out a way to do something particularly for family farms, so that, when dad dies, passes it on to the kid. If the kid stays on the land and continues to grow onions or potatoes or whatever it might be, as long as they're out there on the land and working it and providing jobs and the like, the tax man doesn't cometh with a really hard hit. Now, if they sell the place and they go off to, somewhere, Hawaii or somewhere, to have some cocktails with little parasols in it or something, then you have some tax. But I'd like to find more ways to help that family farmer. And that's something that I've told the state legislators on, as well. Let's try to figure out who we're helping. By the way, some people may have heard about my billionaire income tax, because these billionaires, and it's in the papers, they don't want to pay any tax or much of any tax for years on end. They can buy, borrow, and die. You do all those things, you buy, you borrow against what you bought, and then you die. So I want more fairness for the people that you're talking about, Janet. And I'll tell the state legislators, they always ask me, Ron, what are you hearing about at your town hall meetings? And I always tell them, you ought to do something. That's always one of my first responses. Go do some. You'll hear what people have to say. But I really think that, apropos of Clint's good point with respect to natural sources of material for medicines and things like that, hemp is bringing, young people back to ag because they see some good opportunities. And we ought to have smarter estate tax policies. And my God, the billionaires ought to pay their fair share. That's not going to be incompatible with being successful, by the way. You can be successful and still pay your fair share.
Terrific. Well, thanks for the question, Janet.
Janet, hold on. Nathan, I think Janet wanted to say something.
Well, the problem is with the state having set their exemption at 1 million, and I don't know how long it's been set at that level, but property has gone up in value. Many houses in Portland are now $1 million, and many houses even in Malheur County are approaching $500,000. And so everything is included: insurance and retirement accounts and property. And so it doesn't take very much to get to 1 million.
Yeah.
And
I think if we're going to do something to really get young people on the land and keep people on the land, our state folks ought to rethink how to do this. And I had a couple of suggestions, and I'm trying to do this as chairman of the Senate Finance Committee too. So point well taken, Janet. And I'm going to tell the state legislators, I just heard from a smart person in Malheur who had some good ideas and made the point, you know, she's not interested in enriching a bunch of billionaires. She wants people to stay in farming, and is making the case that the current system at the state level is not exactly sending that message. And she's hearing her friends and neighbors all running in the car over to Idaho or somewhere. Good point.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us, Janet. We do have a few minutes left to get to some of the questions coming in online. So we have a question from Deanna, who asks, Senator, what types of infrastructure projects from the newly passed bipartisan infrastructure law are going to benefit Malheur County? Is there a plan to get this information out to the public and let them know the benefits that Malheur County is getting from that legislation?
The answer is sort of yes and yes. Here's a few things from the bipartisan law. This, folks, is not the budget agreement, the omnibus that was passed late last night, and is the reason I can't be with you in Vail today. This is the bipartisan bill that was passed this summer. There's $5 billion in funding for water infrastructure. So in Malheur, that means help on water for farmers and ranchers, to support water efficiency piping projects would be an example, water conservation efforts for farmers, so it makes it more certain for their irrigation systems. Oregon is going to get well over $3 billion for highways, $265 million for bridge replacement. There's some important projects throughout Eastern Oregon. You can't have big league quality of life with little league infrastructure. So that's a second. Then we know that we're going to have to do a lot better job in terms of broadband coverage. I was one of the ringleaders in expanding the amount that the federal government would get, and Oregon is going to receive at least $100 million in help for broadband coverage. And many people in rural Oregon are going to benefit for an area that I really help to champion, the affordability connection benefit, which is going to expand internet access. And this is sure needed because we've got 136,000 people who really don't have that kind of connectivity. And in Eastern Oregon, when you don't have that kind of connectivity, it hurts your ability to educate our kids. You know, my Secure Rural Schools bill has now brought $3.5 billion to Oregon. And that money goes for schools, which, by the way, can keep students in the classroom. And we also need to expand connectivity, because we saw during the pandemic, you know, a lot of kids, it was a real challenge learning at home. It's one of the reasons we have these mental health challenges now, which I'm working on as well. So those are a few of the benefits. And then there's also in the infrastructure bill, money for energy efficiency in terms of matters like insulating your home and business, the weatherization. So those are a few of the major things. And in terms of how it's being handled, the Oregon Department of Transportation basically has put together a draft to describe how ODOT, the Oregon Department of Transportation, is going to distribute the money. And we always are looking at the Oregon Department of Transportation website. And they're also, I think, continuing to hold public meetings on this, and people can also apply for money under competitive federal grant programs and for anybody who's following this and is interested, we're happy to work with you on it.
Great. Well, thanks for the question, Deanna. We have a question from Paul, who asks, my biggest concern right now is the availability of fuel and fertilizer. We need to open up and produce more fuel here in the United States, and we need help to push that. The same with fertilizer. We need help getting our H-2A workers here in a timely manner so they are not held up trying to get through the bureaucracy. We are having trouble competing against imports from South America and Mexico.
Well, this is so important, and it is, in my view, and folks in Malheur and rural Oregon have, to their credit, been making the case that this is directly linked to immigration reform. Because if you bring hardworking, folks who are now in the shadows out, we can be in a position to have some bipartisan solutions. One is known as the Blue Card Bill. But with many immigration issues, whether it's guest workers, H-2A, all of these kinds of things have stalled. And I'm trying to tell everybody, if we look at all the challenges we're dealing with in the American economy, we're still coming out of COVID, working to make sure we're ready to deal with whatever comes at us. Sarah doing wonderful work again in public health. But, we also need to make sure that we've got the workers, and farmers have the workforce they need. And they also ought to have fair wages and working conditions. And I'm proud that a lot of Oregon farmers are stepping up, and they say it before I can say it. So it's a chance to help people also who are already in the United States are trying to come out of the shadows. And we just need to get Democrats and Republicans behind immigration reform. And I'm very much committed to doing that. This has dragged on way, way too long. And I'll just close this subject by saying that basically, unless you're a Native American, if you're a Native American, set that aside, odds are that you're part of the immigrant experience in this country. Odds are overwhelming. I look out at a town meeting. I say, unless you're a Native American, odds are you're part of the immigrant experience. My parents fled the Nazis in the 30s. Not everybody got out. We lost family at Kristallnacht and Theresienstadt. All my dad wanted to do was get out and fight Hitler. And I didn't even know about some of what he did. He wrote the propaganda pamphlets that we dropped on the Nazis, telling them to give up. And I wanted to play in the NBA, and my dad always said, well, I wrote some pamphlets we dropped on the Nazis. Well, turned out that he was doing a lot more than that. He was basically a spy for our side, spying for American intelligence efforts to defeat the Nazis. And we got pictures of my dad with a bullhorn translating the terms of surrender to the German troops. And I'm convinced my dad passed, I can see him smiling and telling those German troops they lost and Hitler lost. My dad was so proud to be an American. Longer answer than you wanted, but I hope that's responsive to the whole question of immigration, what'll really be good for farmers and what'll be good for our state.
Great. Well, thanks for the question, Paul. We are up against our hour. It has been a terrific conversation here in Malheur County. For those who want to join us for another Southeastern Oregon Town Hall, we will be back at 4 p.m. Pacific in Harney County. Senator Wyden, last word is yours.
Well, I got a lengthy closing address, so if everybody's got errands or chores to do, no. If somebody in DC says they're going to give you a closing address, run off to the refrigerator and get a snack because it's going to be boring and you're going to be there a while. No lengthy closing address from me. Once again, not a bad question in the House from Malheur. It's so It's so wonderful to represent you in the United States Senate, because this is the Oregon way. This is the way we ought to do it. Just everybody has a chance to come out and say their piece. So I'm just looking forward to being there in person. We started off with Sarah and Tim talking about health and Oahe. We got into the economy. We got into ag. We got into education with Ms. Young, Sammy, talking about lithium. Such a promising area for Malheur. My God, we could have spent the whole time just on lithium. And I'm going to get, Sammy, it'll be up on our website, my introduction of our bill to encourage the development of American minerals, especially lithium for Eastern Oregon. I think we're going to have good support with industry and the environmental folks. And it's the kind of thing we can pass. And I got a great response yesterday when I brought it up in the hearing. And I think we'll put that up online, the comments that were very positive in the Energy and Natural Resources Committee tomorrow. And I think that'll be a chance to bring all these issues home. I'm looking at Sarah and Tim down in the corner for starting us off with health and, the quality of life in Malheur, which is what the Oahe is all about. And so instead of some boring speech, I'm just going to put this conversation in the to be continued department. And I can't wait to be back in Malheur and do this in person. Okay. Nathan, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Senator. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time. Take care.